I need you to hear something before I lose the courage to say it, before the noise drowns it out, before we both convince ourselves that silence is safer than truth. There's this thing I've been carrying, not a secret, but a fear, that the woman I'll spend my life with might never truly see me. Not the version I show the world, not the ambitious one who builds and conquers, but the one who wakes up at 3 a.m. wondering if success means anything without someone to share the sunrise with. You know that feeling when you're standing in a crowded room but you're completely alone? That's what terrifies me about love. Not that I won't find you, but that when I do, we'll stand on opposite sides of a bridge we never finished building together. Because here's what nobody talks about: presence isn't automatic. It's a choice you make every single day, even when life gets loud, even when ambition screams louder than your heartbeat. And I'm asking you, future wife, future partner, future witness to my unguarded moments, don't ignore this. Don't let us become strangers who share a bed but never share our truth. I'm about to tell you exactly why this matters more than anything I'll ever build. I've spent most of my life building things, systems, ideas, companies that solve problems for millions of people I'll never meet. And somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that if I could architect the future, I could architect connection too. That love would be logical, predictable, something you could optimize with the right inputs and enough effort. I was wrong. Love isn't a startup you can scale. It's not a rocket you can engineer to reach orbit. It's a bridge. And bridges require two people standing on opposite sides, willing to meet in the middle, even when the distance feels impossible. But here's what nobody told me. The hardest part isn't finding someone willing to build, it's staying present while you build. Because ambition has gravity. It pulls you toward the next milestone, the next vision, the next version of yourself that feels just out of reach. And if you're not careful, you look up one day and realize you've been constructing alone. The person you promised to build with is still standing where you left them, holding blueprints you stopped reading months ago.
I see it everywhere. Couples who started with fire, with late night conversations that felt like discovering new continents. Then life accelerated.
Careers demanded more, dreams got louder, and slowly, without anyone noticing, presence became optional. They're still together, technically. Same house, same routine, but the bridge between them, unfinished, unstable, one emotional earthquake away from collapse. Tell me, when was the last time you actually stopped? Not paused, not scrolled while half listening, but stopped. Put your phone face down. Turned your body toward the person you love. Looked them in the eyes and asked, what's happening inside you, right now? Most people can't remember, not because they don't care, but because we've normalized distraction. We've gamified productivity to the point where being fully present feels like wasting time. And that's the trap I refuse to fall into. I don't want a relationship that survives on leftover energy. I don't want to give you the scraps of my attention after I've spent everything on spreadsheets and strategy sessions. You're not a second shift priority. You're not the person I decompress with after the real work is done. You are the work, the most important system I'll ever contribute to. And if I can't show up for you fully, intentionally, without my mind racing toward tomorrow, then what am I even building for? Here's what scares me most. It's not failure. I failed 1,000 times. Failure teaches. Failure refines. What terrifies me is succeeding at everything except the one thing that actually matters. Imagine that. You reach every goal, you build the empire, you change industries, and then you come home to someone who doesn't recognize you anymore. Because somewhere between the first dream and the 10th achievement, you forgot to bring them with you. You stopped translating your world into words they could understand. You stopped asking about theirs. That's not success. That's tragedy, disguised as ambition. So let me be clear about what I'm asking from you. I'm asking you to hold me accountable, to call me out when I'm physically there but mentally gone, to remind me that presence isn't a mood, it's a practice. Some days it'll feel effortless. We'll talk for hours and lose track of time. Other days it'll be hard. I'll be tired. You'll be overwhelmed. The world will feel heavy. And that's exactly when it matters most. Because presence isn't about perfect moments, it's about showing up in the imperfect ones. It's sitting in silence when there's nothing left to say. It's holding space for emotions that don't make sense yet. It's choosing connection over convenience, even when your brain is begging for escape. Wait before you think this is all about sacrifice. Hear this. Presence isn't draining, distance is. Pretending is. Nodding along while mentally drafting emails, that's exhausting. But actually being there, that's where energy comes from. That's where you remember why you're doing any of this in the first place. I learned this the hard way. There was a time when I thought love meant providing security, stability, a better future. And those things matter, don't get me wrong. But I watched people around me provide everything except themselves. They built financial fortresses but emotional deserts. They gave their partners everything money could buy and nothing the soul actually needed. And the soul needs witness. It needs to be seen. Not admired, not praised. Seen. In its messiness. In its contradictions. In those 3 a.m. moments when the mask comes off and you're just a human trying to make sense of being alive. That's the bridge I'm trying to build. Not one made of grand gestures or Instagram perfect milestones, but one made of small, repeated choices. Eye contact during dinner. Questions that go deeper than, "How was your day?" Remembering the things you mentioned in passing because I was actually listening. Choosing to stay in the tension of a difficult conversation instead of retreating into work. You see, most people think presence is passive, that it's just being there. But real presence is active. It's curiosity. It's asking follow-up questions. It's noticing when your energy shifts and caring enough to explore why. It's building a vocabulary for feelings we don't have words for yet. And here's the beautiful part. When two people commit to this, when they refuse to let distraction win, the bridge doesn't just connect them. It becomes the foundation for everything else. Your dreams don't shrink. They expand. Because now you're not chasing achievement to fill a void. You're building from overflow. From a place where you're already full, already seen, already home. But this requires something radical. It requires you to believe that I can hold both, that I can chase massive, world-changing visions and still make you feel like the center of my universe. That ambition and intimacy aren't enemies. That I can be obsessed with building the future and obsessed with the way you laugh when you're caught off guard. Most people don't believe that's possible. They think you have to choose career or relationship, hustle or connection, conquest or companionship. But I refuse to accept that binary. I refuse to believe that the same focus I apply to solving impossible problems can't be applied to loving you well. So here's my promise. I won't be perfect. I'll get distracted. I'll slip into work mode when I should be in presence mode. But I'll notice, and I'll course correct, because losing you to my own ambition would be the greatest failure I could ever experience. And I'd rather fail at 100 ventures than fail at being the partner you deserve. Have you ever felt that too? That tension between who you're becoming and who you want to be for someone else? It's not about shrinking your dreams, it's about expanding your definition of success to include the person standing beside you. That's the bridge, and I need you to help me build it. There's this moment that keeps replaying in my mind. It's late. The city is quiet. I'm sitting alone, staring at a screen full of possibilities, projects that could change everything, ideas that could reach millions. And in that silence, a question surfaces that I can't ignore anymore. What does it matter if no one truly knows me? Not the curated version, not the confident one who speaks on stages or makes decisions that move markets. I'm talking about the version that doubts, that wonders if any of this means anything, that craves something money can't buy and achievement can't deliver. I'm talking about being known, fully, without filter, without performance. And that terrifies me more than any business risk ever could. Because here's the thing about vulnerability. It's not weakness, but it feels like it. Opening up doesn't come with a guarantee. You can't A/B test honesty. You can't optimize intimacy. You just have to decide that being seen matters more than being safe. And for someone who's spent their entire life controlling variables, that's the scariest investment I'll ever make. But here's what nobody told me. The same courage it takes to build something from nothing, that's the courage love requires. Except in business, failure is data. In love, failure feels like rejection of who you actually are. So we build walls instead. We show up polished, we perform competence, we answer I'm fine when we're falling apart inside. And then we wonder why connection feels shallow, why relationships feel transactional, why someone can be lying next to us and we still feel completely alone. Look at me for a second. I need you to understand something. When I talk about letting you in, I'm not talking about dramatic confessions or therapy sessions disguised as date nights. I'm talking about the small, unglamorous truth telling that builds trust over time. Like admitting when I'm overwhelmed, when I don't have answers, when I'm scared that I'm not enough, even though I've convinced the world otherwise. That's the intimacy I'm after. Not the highlight reel, the raw footage. The moments where I don't have it together, and I trust you enough to witness that. Have you ever noticed how much energy it takes to pretend? To maintain an image that doesn't match what's happening inside? It's exhausting. And the tragic irony is that we do it most with the people we're supposed to be closest to. We'll share our struggles with strangers on the internet, but hide them from the person we share a bed with. Why? Because strangers don't stay. They can't disappoint us. They can't use our vulnerability against us when things get hard. But the person we're building a life with, they see everything. And that means they have the power to hurt us in ways no one else can. And that's exactly why it's worth it. Wait before you think I've figured this out. Hear this. I haven't. I'm still learning how to let my guard down. Still unlearning the belief that strength means solving everything alone. Still fighting the instinct to retreat into work whenever emotions get complicated. But I know this much. If I can't be honest with you about my fears, my doubts, my 3 a.m. questions about meaning and purpose, then what are we even doing? Are we partners or are we just two people performing stability for each other? I refuse to build a relationship on pretense. I refuse to love you from behind a mask. And I need you to refuse that too. I need you to call me deeper, to ask the questions I'm avoiding, to notice when I'm hiding behind productivity because I'm too scared to sit with what I'm actually feeling. Because real trust isn't built in the good times. It's built when I mess up and you stay, when I'm difficult and you're patient, when I show you the parts of me I'm ashamed of and you don't flinch. That's when the bridge gets stronger. That's when I start believing that maybe, just maybe, I don't have to earn your love. I can just receive it. You see, most people think love is about finding someone who completes you, but that's not it. Love is about finding someone you can be incomplete with, someone who sees your rough edges and doesn't try to sand them down, someone who holds space for your contradictions, the visionary who sometimes feels lost, the confident one who sometimes needs reassurance, the strong one who sometimes needs to fall apart. And here's what scares me most about that. It requires me to believe that I'm worthy of that kind of love. Not because of what I achieve, not because of what I provide, but just because I exist, just because I'm human, just because I'm me. That's the hardest sell I've ever had to make. To myself. And B, because I spent my whole life proving my value through output, through results, through being useful, productive, impressive. And now I'm asking you to love me in the moments when I'm none of those things, when I'm just tired, just confused, just sitting in the tension of not knowing what comes next. Can you do that? Can you love the messy middle as much as the mountaintop moments? I need you to, not because I plan to stay messy, but because growth isn't linear, healing isn't neat, and if I have to perform perfection to keep your love, I'll lose myself trying. So here's what I'm offering instead: radical honesty. Not the brutal kind that uses truth as a weapon, but the gentle kind that says, this is where I am today. This is what I'm struggling with. This is what I need. And then trusting that you'll meet me there. Not with solutions, not with judgment, just with presence. That's the foundation of everything. Not grand promises, not elaborate plans, just two people committed to telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Because the alternative is slow erosion. It's saying, I'm fine until those words become a wall. It's hiding resentment until it calcifies into distance. It's protecting each other from hard conversations until there's nothing left to protect. And I've seen that pattern destroy relationships that looked perfect from the outside. Couples who had everything except honesty, who communicated about logistics, but never about longing, who planned futures, but never processed feelings. That won't be us. I'm committing to the harder path, the one where we sit in difficult emotions instead of scrolling past them, where we name our needs instead of expecting each other to guess, where we repair ruptures instead of pretending they didn't happen. But this requires something from you too. It requires you to believe that vulnerability is strength, that asking for what you need isn't needy, it's mature, that expressing disappointment isn't betrayal, it's trust. Because if you can't tell me when I've hurt you, how can I learn to love you better? If you can't share your fears, how can I remind you of your strength? If you can't let me see you cry, how will I know when you need me most? This is the bridge I keep talking about. Not just me showing up for you, but you trusting me enough to let me in, to risk being disappointed, to believe that I can handle your whole truth, not just the parts you think I want to see. Don't deny it. You know exactly what I mean. You've felt the weight of hiding, the loneliness of being surrounded by people who love a version of you that doesn't fully exist, the exhaustion of managing everyone's perception instead of just living your truth. I'm saying you don't have to do that with me. You can put the mask down, you can stop performing, you can just be complicated, contradictory, beautifully imperfect you. And I'll do the same. That's the deal. That's the foundation. That's the only way this works. I used to think purpose was something you discovered alone, like some solo expedition into your soul, where you emerge with clarity, direction, a mission statement for your life, and maybe that's true for the first chapter. But here's what I've learned. The deepest purpose doesn't come from what you build alone. It comes from what you build together. Let me explain what I mean. There's a version of success that's entirely self-contained. You set goals, you hit them, you move the needle, you prove something to yourself or the world, and it feels good for a while. But then the celebration ends, the notifications fade, and you're left with a question that won't go away. Who am I doing this for? That's the moment everything changes. That's when you realize achievement without connection is just noise. Impressive noise, maybe, but still noise. I don't want to spend my life accumulating wins that no one truly shares with me. I don't want to build empires in isolation, while the person I love lives in a different world. I want our purposes to intertwine, not in a way that erases individuality. I'm not asking you to abandon your dreams for mine. I'm asking for something more complex, more beautiful. I'm asking us to become each other's context. What does that mean? It means when I'm chasing something that terrifies me, you understand the why behind it, not just the surface goal, but the deeper longing it represents. And when you're fighting for something that matters to you, I don't just cheer from the sidelines. I study it. I learn the language of your world. I become fluent in your vision. Because here's what nobody talks about. Most couples operate in parallel. They have separate careers, separate ambitions, separate internal worlds. They update each other on outcomes, but never on the process. I got the promotion, I closed the deal, I finished the project, but they never share the doubt that preceded the decision, the fear that accompanied the risk, the moment they almost quit.
And without that depth, you're just roommates with shared expenses. You're coordinating logistics, not building legacy.
But here's what nobody told me. Building together doesn't mean doing the same thing. It means creating space where both visions can breathe, where my ambition doesn't eclipse yours, where your growth doesn't threaten mine, where we celebrate each other's wins like they're our own because they are. That's the kind of partnership I'm after. Not one where we compete for bandwidth or attention, but one where we amplify each other, where your success makes me better, where my breakthroughs inspire your next move. Tell me, have you ever been with someone who genuinely celebrated your growth, not tolerated it, not passively supported it, but actively championed it, who pushed you toward your edge, even when it meant less time together, who reminded you of your potential when you were ready to settle? That's rare. Most people say they want a partner who grows, but what they really want is stability, predictability, someone who stays the same so they don't have to face their own stagnation. I'm not interested in that kind of comfort. I want the beautiful discomfort of two people evolving together, where we're constantly challenging each other to become more honest, more courageous, more aligned with who we're meant to be. And that requires something radical. It requires us to see each other's growth not as a threat, but as an invitation. When you level up, I don't get insecure. I get curious. I ask what shifted, what you learned, how I can integrate that wisdom into my own journey. Wait before you think this sounds exhausting. Hear this. It's not. You know what's exhausting? Hiding your ambition because it makes your partner uncomfortable. Dimming your light so someone else doesn't feel overshadowed. Managing someone's ego instead of building something meaningful. That's draining. But growing together, that's energizing. That's what makes waking up feel like opportunity instead of obligation. I've seen both versions. I've watched couples where one person's success created resentment, where every achievement became evidence of imbalance, where growth was met with guilt instead of celebration. And I've watched it slowly poison everything: the quiet comments, the backhanded compliments, the way support turned performative. That won't be us. Not because we're immune to jealousy or insecurity, but because we'll name it when it shows up. We'll talk about it before it metastasizes. We'll ask hard questions like, am I celebrating you the way you need? Or, is my ambition making you feel small? Because shared purpose isn't automatic, it's intentional. It's built through hundreds of small conversations where we realign, where we check in not just on tasks, but on meaning, on whether we're still building toward the same horizon. And here's the beautiful tension. We can have different goals and still share purpose. You might be creating art while I'm solving infrastructure problems. You might be teaching while I'm building systems. But if we both believe we're here to leave things better than we found them, if we're both committed to presence, to growth, to truth, then we're on the same mission. That's the bridge again. It's not about identical destinations. It's about shared values guiding different paths. You see, I used to think partnership meant finding someone who wanted exactly what I wanted. Same timeline, same milestones, same definition of success. But that's not partnership. That's cloning. And it's boring. What I want is someone who challenges my assumptions, who asks why I'm chasing certain things, who holds me accountable to my stated values instead of just my stated goals, who loves me enough to call out the gap between who I say I want to be and who I'm actually being. That's intimacy. That's shared purpose. That's two people refusing to let each other settle for less than their potential. But this requires vulnerability again. It requires me to admit when I'm off track, when I'm chasing achievement to avoid something deeper, when I'm building to prove something instead of building from purpose. And I need you to be willing to hear that, to hold space for my recalibration, without making it mean I'm failing. Because growth isn't linear. Purpose isn't static. What mattered last year might not matter now. And that's okay. That's human. Some feelings don't need words, but this one does. I need to know that if my vision shifts, you won't see it as betrayal. You'll see it as evolution, as me becoming more honest about what actually matters. And I promise you the same. If your path changes, I won't hold you to an outdated version of yourself. I'll ask what's emerging, what you're discovering, where you're being called next. Because that's what real support looks like. Not agreeing with every decision, but trusting the person making them. Believing they have wisdom you can't see yet. Giving them permission to explore, even when it's inconvenient. Have you ever had that? Someone who trusted your process even when they couldn't predict your outcome? It's the greatest gift you can give someone, and it's the foundation of shared purpose. Because when two people commit to this, when they refuse to make each other small, they don't just build individual success. They create something neither could have imagined alone. A relationship that becomes its own entity, its own force, its own legacy. And that's bigger than any solo achievement. That's the thing that actually lasts. So here's my question. Are you willing to build that with me? Are you willing to let our purposes intertwine without losing yourself? Are you willing to champion my growth even when it's inconvenient, trusting that I'll do the same for you? Because if you are, we're not just building a relationship, we're building a movement, a partnership that proves love and ambition aren't enemies, that intimacy and impact can coexist, that two people committed to presence, vulnerability, and shared purpose can change more than just their own lives. That's the vision. That's the bridge. That's what I'm asking you to build with me. Here's the part no one prepared me for. Love isn't something you find and then possess. It's something you choose every single day, even when the feeling fades, especially when the feeling fades. I know that sounds unromantic. We're taught that love is this overwhelming force that sweeps you off your feet and carries you into the sunset. And maybe it starts that way, with butterflies and late night conversations that make time disappear. With the intoxicating newness of discovering someone who feels like the answer to questions you didn't know you were asking. But that's not where love lives long term. Love lives in the ordinary. In the Tuesday morning when you're both tired and the world feels heavy and there's nothing particularly magical happening. That's when the choice matters. That's when you decide whether this person is worth showing up for, even when showing up feels hard. And I'll be honest with you, there will be days when I don't feel like showing up. When work is overwhelming and my patience is thin, and the last thing I want to do is have a meaningful conversation about feelings. There will be moments when I'm so deep in my own head that being present for you feels like an impossible ask.
Oh,
But here's what I've learned. Feelings follow action more than action follows feelings. If I wait until I feel like being present, I'll miss half our life together. But if I choose presence even when I don't feel like it, the feeling eventually catches up. That's the discipline no one talks about. Love as practice. Love as commitment that transcends mood. Love as showing up not because it's easy, but because it matters. Tell me, have you ever stayed when every instinct told you to leave? Not in a toxic way, but in that moment when the person you love is being difficult and your patience is gone, and walking away would feel so much easier than leaning in. That's the moment that defines everything. Because relationships aren't tested in the honeymoon phase. They're tested when reality sets in. When you realize this person you adore is also human, also flawed, also carrying wounds and patterns and defense mechanisms that will occasionally drive you crazy. And that's when the real work begins. Not the work of changing them, but the work of loving them anyway, of seeing past the behavior to the fear underneath, of remembering that the person snapping at you isn't an enemy, they're just overwhelmed, scared, or hurting in ways they don't know how to name yet. Wait, before you think I'm asking for unconditional tolerance of bad behavior, hear this. I'm not. Boundaries matter. Respect matters. There is a difference between loving someone through their humanness and enabling patterns that damage both of you. What I'm talking about is something more nuanced. It's the ability to hold two truths at once. I can be frustrated with you and still choose you. I can be disappointed by your actions and still believe in your heart. I can need space and still be committed to working through this. That's the complexity of real partnership. It's not black and white. It's not everything is perfect or we're falling apart. It's the messy middle where we're both trying our best and sometimes falling short and learning how to repair instead of retreat. And repair is everything. It's the skill that separates relationships that last from ones that crumble under pressure. Because conflict is inevitable. You and I are going to hurt each other. Not maliciously, but we will. We'll misunderstand. We'll project. We'll say the wrong thing at the wrong time. We'll be selfish when we should be generous. The question isn't whether we'll mess up. It's what we do after. Do we defend, deny, double down on being right? Or do we pause, acknowledge the impact, and ask what repair looks like? I'm choosing the second path. Even when my ego screams to protect itself, even when admitting I was wrong feels like losing. Because being right isn't the goal, connection is. You see, most people think love means never fighting. But I don't want that. I don't want a relationship so fragile